Welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm Mia Toschi. Here in the U.S., we are celebrating Labor Day. It usually marks the unofficial end of summer and also back to school for the entire nation. Now, while some may be cheering, it is also a transitional time that can be pretty stressful. We have Dr. Yohuru Williams and Paul Oster, CEO of Better Qualified, sitting in on this segment to talk about that. So we kind of talked about this at break, everybody. Paul's got a young son. He's going to talk about the young kids. And Dr. Williams, you're a professor, so you're going to talk about the older kids. And Dee Dee and I are just going to fire away some questions. How about that? Okay, so it's a transitional time. Let's talk about just getting the little kids ready for back to school and saying goodbye to mom and dad. I mean, that's a tough thing. You have a first grader that's heading back to school right now. So just talk about how you're getting your son ready for school.
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, with my work schedule, Max goes to camp every day during the summer. And, you know, we joke about it. It's almost as stressful as getting him ready for school because he's got to get on the bus to go to camp and he needs all this stuff. When he goes to school, he just gets on the bus, you know, with his backpack. You know, you don't have to put sunscreen on him and all of that stuff. So I think the transition for him won't be as great as a kid who has been home, you know, just staying around the house all day, not on a schedule, back to reality where they're up and they're out of the house at a certain time. And, you know, just like with us, it becomes a stressful situation to make those times.
And it's certainly, you know, I was a teacher, so, you know, just getting the classrooms back together. You were talking about the school supplies, just getting that together. Interesting note, I just read this, teachers spend on average $400 for their classrooms. So always thank a teacher, especially on the first day of school, for setting up those classrooms for the year. There's more stress on kids now. Let's just talk a little bit about that right now. And we'll get back to some tips, but we hear about it over and over again that the kids are overloaded.
You know, here's the thing I think too, summers, I always thought I was out of school too long. I was ready to go back earlier. And some people talk about all year school or maybe a shorter summer. I don't know how you all think about it being involved, but I know as a former student, I just thought you were gone too long, and it's hard to get back into the groove.
Well, I agree with that, but I think that, and there's some schools that are going to those, what is it, mid-year?
Moving to those models.
Right.
But particularly in terms of math and science, because once kids get out of the routine and the practice of really doing those types of problems and being engaged in that way, it's harder to get started up. I mean, Paul, you mentioned routine, and routine is critical for young kids, even for older kids going back to school, because it's the idea of not just going to bed at a certain time and getting up, but being in the practice of doing math problems, doing homework, being disciplined, even for those kids who are student athletes who start a little earlier. So all those things are critical, but at the end of the day, the routine sometimes is the most important thing.
All right, so let's get Dr. Williams. Are you the type of teacher that gives homework on the first day?
I used to. I taught high school in Washington, D.C., and I'm a big stickler for getting kids back into the reading and writing routine as quickly as possible. In the United States, it's interesting because in the Northeast, we're accustomed to kids getting out much later because they make up snow days.
Right.
But in the South, in some cases, they've been out for a long time, and those big gulfs are major.
Yeah, my nephews and my niece, they're in the Southwest, they're in Arizona. They started back up in early August. And that was actually done also for farming. So there were different reasons why they did that in different parts of the country. But let's talk about that routine, and actually routines are good for people of any age. But what's one of the best things that you can say for younger kids to get back? You know, did you start getting your son? A lot of people say get your son or daughter waking up early 2 weeks before they.
Yep. Yep, and it's time management. So if they were, you know, accustomed to, you know, this video games and the screen time during the summer has been increased, you have to decrease that because one of the studies that were just released is about sleep deprivation. And our children are up, you know, I'm up at 5 a.m., Max is up at like 6 a.m., and a lot of time, and he's in first grade. But so by the time he gets home from school and does his homework and gets his stuff together, has dinner, now, you know, now it's bedtime. So time management, I think, is one of the most critical things that parents need to instill in their children, because as a parent, you're running around crazy and you forget, you know, he's been down there playing a game for an hour. And he might not have an hour to play when, you know, he has so much other stuff to do.
And it's interesting because there was a study that I read this week about kids' ADD, ADHD, and so many kids are on electronic devices because they have to do their homework that way, tablets.
That's right.
Is your son using a tablet for his homework?
Not for homework, but he has an iPad that he uses on a regular basis.
Okay. Well, a lot of the older kids now, middle school, high school, Dr. Williams, and certainly in college, they're all on tablets. And a lot of people are saying, a lot of the studies and the doctors are saying that it overstimulates the brain. And so when do you shut that off if you're doing your homework?
It's a big problem for younger kids. I mean, really, you really want to encourage them to unplug, because a lot of what happens in school, technology is a wonderful device, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of interpersonal skills that they're going to be dealing with, a lot of listening and following instruction. So unplugging sooner rather than later is probably a good bet. Even at the university, where we put most things on PDF and they're available through the library and through listservs and things like that, students are still required to print those out and bring them to class. So again, you really want to get them the practice of unplugging sooner rather than later.
What's one of the biggest challenges right now? You've taught at the high school level and you've certainly taught on the college level. What's one of the biggest challenges for you? And and also the biggest change that you've seen?
Biggest change for me in terms of young people is the really lack of preparation that they come to school with now, and I think that comes from a couple of different sources. I think for educators, one of the biggest challenges, at least K through 12, is what's happening in terms of shifts in Common Core, high stakes testing. The learning environments are really changing, and so in a lot of ways, when you say thank a teacher, and I definitely agree with that, part of the impetus for that, or some of these changes have really undermined what we consider to be the foundations of American education. A teacher in front of a group of kids where you have one-on-one instruction, arts and crafts, music, and a well-rounded learning environment, not just math and high-stakes testing.
And I think that when we do talk about testing, it's not just the kids, but the teachers that are so stressed out also. And I don't know if you have friends that are teachers, but I have a lot of friends that are teachers, and there's just so much stress, and the fun in teaching has sort of left the industry, if you will.
There's no time for creative thinking. There's no time for
learning
through play. I'm a big advocate of those types of things, and these core curriculums and standards and stuff. We're not encouraging learning. We're encouraging, memorization. Learn it because you got to take a test at the end of the week. And do they really learn it? I don't know. I think they just memorize it so they can answer a question on Friday.
Well, and that's true, and that's just a different philosophy. I think you need the music, and you need gym, and you need these things to enhance, the tough stuff too. It's like going to college, liberal arts. I really think it helps everything, but there's not a lot of money with some schools now, so they cut these things that are really important. Art.
Well, money is certainly a huge issue, but it's interesting. I had a professor when I was in England, and the first thing he did was he played Pink Floyd's Brick in a Wall. And he said, don't become a brick in a wall. And he said,
oh, I like that.
And he played it over and over again, and he would start our classes on Monday because he wanted us to be individual thinkers, whereas now it seems like everybody has to do the same thing, and it's just becoming...
Not good.
Yeah.
And so let's go back to a couple of the different tips, if you will, for kids going to college for the first time. I mean, that's always a huge stress, very stressful for kids.
Particularly on families who are also sitting, who haven't had that experience. So again, it's the first person in the family who's gone to college or university and just not knowing the small things, what to bring in terms of a comforter, things like that really, and thank God for the net, because that's been demystified. There are a lot of great websites that offer information on those types of things. The most important thing for young people going to college is to remember this is a time of reinvention. And wherever you were in your senior year in high school, you can become a completely different person. You're starting fresh. And I love that. I think it's a great message for those who are making the transition to university. And it's true every year thereafter. You have this opportunity to literally reinvent yourself. And that's great and wonderful. And we should definitely, emphasize that to college-bound students.
I'm going to go back to college just on that note.
Oh, my goodness. You should do the national commercial.
Wow. I'm going to go to Fairfield U and sign up as an incoming.
We'd love to have you, Mia. That would be great.
What else are you doing, Paul, to get your son ready?
Again, that's it. Stressing, again, fortunately for us, Max went to a private school through kindergarten for a couple of years where they encouraged learning through play. And I used to say to him, what did you learn today? And he'd say, nothing, Dad. And then he'd show me all this incredible stuff, and he's reading on like a 4th grade level and never even realized that he was learning because they did it in a way, again, there was creative thinking involved, and as long as you could support an answer, maybe it was right. So instead of just filling out a barcode, a test where you're saying, there's only one answer and you have to get this answer, and it's, I think those are the problems.
Oh, I hate those tests. You know, there's so much controversy about the testing. You know, and like Mia said, it's difficult with the teachers because I feel like it reflects on them. So you want them to memorize, and it's just, you know, just too much pressure. It seems in the wrong areas. I think that's testing, a lot of it's not right.
I agree with you 100%, and they've done a disservice to teachers because they're taking away the opportunity for differentiated instruction. For a teacher to look at a student and say, there are some interventions that I can explore with this student that are going to be different than others, and in taking away that individuality, what
Terrible.
they are doing is, and then the other thing I really despise is tying teacher performance to test scores. That's a huge problem.
That's horrible.
So of course the teacher is going to teach differently and probably not in a
Well,
way
they're
they want
teaching to the test, and
right.
there's
and
been
that's
so
not
many
the right
articles
way.
written on that.
Criminal.
Yes, absolutely. I think criminal is a good word for
Wow.
that. Paul, thank you very much. We're going to continue, everybody. The fun will continue. When we return, a look at the lighter side of news. The lightning round is next.